There are a lot of theories on how this spinning platter got its name, but it is agreed upon that having a Lazy Susan is a huge convenience. It could even be called revolutionary. No one seems to know who Susan was and whether or not she was lazy, but Lazy Susan does have more of a ring to it than lackadaisical Lancelot, disinclined Delilah, or half-hearted Henry. An advertisement in the 1917 issue of Vanity Fair magazine showed a revolving mahogany tray that had a creative description calling it a Lazy Susan. That $8.50 in 1917 was worth more than $200 in 2022 dollars, but I'll show you how to make a custom beauty like this for about $30 in parts. Hi, this is Steve DeMasi, and welcome to Uncharted DIY. This Lazy Susan is super useful, fun and easy to make, and they're even great for giving as gifts. It only takes about 2 hours to make, though with drying time, it makes for a perfect weekend project. And because it doesn't require any power tools, you can make one of these even if you're a DIY beginner, and I'll show you how. I made this one to go along with the countertop extensions that I built to expand our eating area from 2 seats to 6. If you're interested, you can see how the countertop extensions work in this video. When the extensions are on, the countertop is pretty big, and reaching the condiments and side dishes was a stretch. So, the Lazy Susan came to the rescue. First, I'll give you an overview of the steps, and then I'll show you what parts and materials you'll need to complete this project. If you're an experienced DIYer, this may be all you need, but for those of you that are new to DIY or would like more complete information, stay with me and I'll walk you through each step in more detail. Sand the wood and fill any imperfections if you're going for a fine finish. If you're going for distressed or rustic, you can add as many imperfections as your heart desires. I'm using a power sander, but this could easily be done by hand with a sanding block. If you need to sand indoors, I have a video showing how to turn your shop vac into a dust collection system. You can check that out here. If using a softwood such as pine, apply pre-stain wood conditioner. Apply stain using enough coats to achieve the depth of color you're looking for. Coat with polyurethane. Attach the swivel plate, or spinny part as my wife calls it. And finally, adhere the grippy feet. To complete this project, you'll need a round, unfinished pine board. This one is 1 inch by 18 inches, but you can make yours any size you'd like. To keep things simple, go with solid wood and not plywood. Although some plywood can look nice, the layers will show on the sides. And plywood discs require special tools, such as a router with a radius bit, to make smoothly rounded edges like this one already has. Pre-stain wood conditioner. Pine is a soft and porous wood, so it often absorbs stain unevenly, resulting in a blotchy appearance. Stain. You can choose any tone you'd like to either match or contrast with existing woods and your decor. I chose golden oak to match the oak edging on my countertops. Wood filler. Because pine is soft, it often comes with small dings and dents. If you're going for a distressed look, this is great. However, I wanted a smooth surface for mine, so I added a bit of wood filler to fill any imperfections. Polyurethane. Polyurethane is food safe when cured, and it resists the stains and scuffs a Lazy Susan would encounter in normal use. Its only kryptonite is high heat from hot plates, pots, and pans, but that's true of any wood finish. Use hot pads or trivets underneath with hot items to prevent damage to the finish. I made this one over 3 years ago, and it still looks great. Painter's pyramids allow both sides to have finish applied without having to wait hours for drying. Sandpaper of varying grits and a sanding block or power sander. This is a small enough project that if you don't already have a power sander, you don't need to get one just for this Lazy Susan project. You'll also need a swivel plate. For small Lazy Susans, a 6-inch plate would work well, but I went with a 12-inch swivel for maximum stability. I didn't want it possibly tipping with heavier items, such as gravy boats and side dishes. Self-adhesive feet. There are many types available, but I went with these round rubber cabinet bumpers since they're grippy and low profile. For you experts, that may have been all the information you need to build one of these great Lazy Susans. But for those that don't have a lot of DIY experience, let's go through those steps in a little more detail. If you're still with me, let me walk you through the steps. I want to be thorough and explain how things work, but don't let that detail make you think that this is a complicated job. This is a great project, even for DIY beginners. You can do this. First, check over the pine board. It might have little dents and divots since pine is a soft wood. I know mine had some. They weren't big or deep, but I wanted my Lazy Susan to be smooth. Give the board an initial sanding. With pine, I recommend starting with 120 grit, always sanding in a parallel direction to the grain to avoid scratches. If you're using a power sander, keep the tool always moving so you don't sand unevenly or take too much off one spot. Don't use a lot of pressure, which will scratch the wood and clog up the sandpaper. Let the weight of the tool do the work. Use smooth strokes and let the sandpaper go a bit past the edges of the board so you don't just sand the center of the circle. Make sure to get the curved sides too. Wipe the sanding dust off the board and look at the pattern of the grain and the amount of defects to determine which side will be the top and which side the bottom. The bottom will be covered in the center by the swivel plate, so minor imperfections won't detract from the look. Dings and dents that weren't removed by the initial sanding will be filled using the wood filler as per the instructions. Choose a filler color to match the color of stain you'll be using. For shallow imperfections, I just use my finger to apply the filler rather than a putty knife. Allow the filler to protrude slightly above the surrounding surface to allow for settling and sanding. Most wood fillers dry pretty fast. Once dry, sand the areas using the power sander or sanding block until the filled area is flat with the board and any residue is gone. Then use 150 grit sandpaper, followed by 180 grit. The lower grit numbers mean the particles are more coarse, so progressively using finer paper smooths out any tiny scratches caused by the sandpaper. You might be tempted to keep going to 220 or even higher number, finer sandpapers, but oversanding can create a situation where the wood will not accept a stain or finish. Remember that fine dust from sanding is harmful to your lungs. Use a dust mask and either sand outside or use a dust collector. Check out my video on building the ultimate shop vac-based dust collection system. It keeps your shop vac running at peak efficiency and saves a ton of money on shop vac filters. When sanding is complete, wipe down the surfaces thoroughly. An important note about the wood finishing products. Wood finishing products are available in water-based and oil-based versions. While the two types can be mixed if done correctly, it's easier if you stick with all oil or all water-based finishes. Oils are more resistant to scratches, moisture, and heat, but nowadays the difference is slight. Water-based finishes dry faster, are easy to clean up, and lower odor, so I went with water-based finishes for my Lazy Susan. Apply pre-stain wood conditioner. Next, we'll apply the pre-stain wood conditioner. Many softwoods, such as pine, absorb stain unevenly. Using a wood conditioner seals the wood for a smooth stain finish. I started with the back of the wood, so if there were any marks left by the painting pyramids or stands, it won't show on the finished Lazy Susan. I like to use a lintless rag to apply the wood conditioner, going with the grain. You'll definitely want to use gloves. Give it a generous coat so it soaks in. My instructions said to allow it to penetrate for 5 to 15 minutes, then remove any excess with a clean, dry, absorbent cloth. Apply stain within 2 hours. Apply stain. If you go with a water-based stain, I'd recommend the semi-transparent stain so the wood grain is enhanced and visible through the finish. Solid color stain has more color, but the grain is less visible. Stir, but don't shake the stain before applying. It's recommended to use a brush, but I like to use a lintless rag to apply the stain, going with the direction of the grain. Wipe away any excess in the time frame given in the instructions. Mine called for 2 minutes. If you want a deeper tone, you can apply more coats, waiting the proper time per instructions. In my case, it was 1 to 2 hours between coats. Once the stain is the color you like, let it dry for the recommended time before the final finish. Mine called for 8 hours, but I let it sit overnight. Apply the polyurethane. With the stain completely dry, you can apply the polyurethane. I used a semi-gloss, so it has some sheen, but it's not so smooth and slick that items fly off the Lazy Susan when it's turned. Apply a thin coat with a foam or bristle brush and allow to dry for the time called for, 2 hours in my case. Give it a light sanding with 220 grit sandpaper to knock down any tiny bumps and promote adhesion of the following coats. Do not use steel wool. Wipe away any dust from sanding and apply a second coat. If your polyurethane calls for a third coat like mine did, repeat the light sanding and dust removal between coats. After the final coat, let it dry for the recommended time before attaching the swivel plate. Attach the swivel plate in the center of the board. It's important to find the exact center so the Lazy Susan doesn't wobble back and forth when turned. Finding the center is easy. You'll need a square and a marker that's easy to remove, such as a China marker, grease pencil, or even a crayon to make your marks. I'm using a carpenter's square, but if you don't have one, you can use just about anything that has a precise 90-degree right angle and a sharp corner. Line up the corner of the square even with the edge of the board. Mark a line on both sides of the angle. Then line up the square along one of the lines, making the corner flush with the edge again. Mark the side of the angle. Then use a straight edge or your square to connect two corners diagonally. Then connect the other two corners. The X marks the spot. The point where the lines intersect in the center is the center of the circle. Make a small permanent mark at this intersection. I use the tip of a small nail to put a tiny divot at that spot. Then remove the marker lines and line up the swivel plate so the tiny divot is in the exact center. Screw in 4 screws. Then add the feet using the self-adhesive rubber cabinet bumpers. I used 8 of them for stability. And that's it. You've done it. Now, you should probably have a party to celebrate your new Lazy Susan and to put it to good use. And let me know in the comments if you built one just like this or if you put your own spin on it. And please make sure to hit that like button so YouTube will share this video with more people. This is Steve, and thanks for watching Uncharted DIY.